Hello and welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Mark Gillen of the 128th District in Berks and Lancaster counties. Serving as your representative in Harrisburg affords me the opportunity to meet many special people. But there will always be a special place in my heart for our veterans. I recently sponsored a resolution commemorating the 70th anniversary of the Japanese surrender aboard the USS Missouri, which marked the end of World War II. I was honored to invite local World War II veterans to the House floor to mark the occasion. When we hear about the Battle of the Bulge and the Normandy invasion, it's important to remember that for a little while longer, we can do more than just read about them in a history book. We still have living connections to these famous events. Join me now and listen as John Fleming and George Moore share their stories of military service and their contributions to history. George, you said you're a combat engineer. What does a combat engineer do during World War II?
Everything. When we finally got to the Bulge, I was in England early in November of '44. But our orders didn't come down to go to the Bulge. But when we finally got there, we served as infantry. Went up into Luxembourg, actually, I think it was the Moselle River. Germans were on one side, we were on the other. By this time the Germans were stopped. They were no longer advancing. We were kicking their butt back into the native Germany. So I'd say the first month we were there, we were nothing but combat infantry, actually. And after the Bulge was over, we didn't really start taking our heaviest casualties until after the Bulge was over. The Bulge was over on the 25th, I think, of January, 26th, and we got our first real casualties on the 27th of January. But we replaced another outfit up there, and boy, when I walked in there, I said, what am I in for? Them guys looked like they were through, which they probably were. They were all disheveled, and it didn't take us long. We were the same way. But anyway, after that, you want me to...
Go ahead, George.
After the Bulge was over and we had them stopped, after we all had our frozen feet and hands and the likes of that, we were moved out and told we were going to breach the Siegfried Line. So, again, we were still combat infantry. We were behind the 6th Armored Patton's tanks, breached the Siegfried Line, and we captured some pillboxes, 13 or so. This is our company, A Company. And, I don't know, 70-some prisoners. But we were basically combat infantry, and it was there I know I had a bullet with my name on it, but it was misspelled because it went whizzing by my ear and thudded in the bank behind me. So I used to say it was a sniper, but if it was a sniper, he wouldn't have missed. So it was probably an ordinary German soldier. After that, the thaw had started. Oh, by the way, when the thaw started, then we got mud packs that would have been great during the very cold winter, where we had nothing but combat boots. They were very ineffective. But then we were sent into a place called St. Vith, Belgium. It was a very important crossroad during the battle, and it was leveled. There was not a house standing nowhere, and we were ordered to build corduroy roads, which is chop the timber down and get it so tanks and vehicles can go through quickly. And from there we were shipped south down to the Rhine River. As a quick synopsis, but we were ordered to take the 89th Infantry Division on an assault crossing across the Rhine River. There again, I was so lucky in all these dates. We were the second wave. The first wave of engineers got shot to pieces that morning, night. I remember driving down there, and it looked like daylight at 3 o'clock in the morning, flares and everything. The Germans were on the west side, and the west side of the Rhine River has large vertical banks. It's very hard to see. But up on top was a German activated, and they were shooting 20 millimeters as personnel weapons. And Well, we did that. We crossed the Rhine, and from there we went further and further into Germany. Built a few bridges, permanent bridges. We built some permanent bridges. And that's two things that always stick out in my mind. We built two permanent bridges, one across the Weir River and one across the Ilse River. One was 214 feet long, and it was a 70-ton two-way bridge, and pile-driven bridges. Now, we had help to put the piles in the river, but the rest of it we did ourselves. I guess it was a regular engineer outfit that had the pile driver. And we built both of those bridges in 7 days and 7 nights' time, completely built. And I used to say it would take 7 years to get a permit to do it in Pennsylvania. But I can't get over the fact that a bunch of ragtag kids, a company of kids, in 1 week's time, working 24/7, could put up an entire bridge that way. And we weren't really engineers. We had some, but we were combat engineers. In other words, fighting engineers. We had the infantry training and all that. But I think that's two major accomplishments we did. And then the second bridge was in Potsdam, Germany, and I forget the exact date. I think it was May 8th the war was declared over, and May 9th we were scraped by, I think it was a P-51, one of our planes, but I don't know who
Mustang.
was it. Yeah, it was a Mustang. And I don't know what was in it, whether it was a German or American. But that's a quick synopsis of how I got through the war.
Can I ask you just a few questions of follow-up here? By the way, have you put in an application at PennDOT to work on roads and bridges in Pennsylvania? Because it sounds like you can get it done.
I would need help. I'd have to re-up I'd have to go to heaven. I hope they're up there anyway.
Yeah. Well, you had to do it. You got the job done. It was 24/7. You had to move equipment and men. It occurred to me, you'd mentioned a bullet whizzing by your head. There's training, there's classroom, and then there's real life. Was there a moment, and maybe it was that moment, where you could say, whoa, this is war, I could die?
Now, surprisingly enough, the thing I remember most about the war was when the war was over. And we were in Marseille. Now, John said about points, we were a young outfit. We didn't have near the time. And we were in Marseille, and all our provisions were loaded on a ship. We were going to go right down past the United States, through the Panama Canal, and straight over to Manila. And I said, I'm going to probably end up dead on the shores of Japan. But while we were there, they dropped the 2 bombs. Harry gives the okay, and they dropped the 2 bombs. Now, we were in tents, large tents with board floors in Marseille. Right next to us was the 82nd Airborne Division. They did not have anything confiscated from them. They had all their ammunition, all their guns and everything else. And they announced that the war was over. They dropped the bombs, and this was the unofficial war over in Japan. Mm-hmm. It opened up that night, and I wanted to dig in so bad because I said, I've been through a darn war, and I don't want to die in a tent here in Marseille. That scared me more than any time in the whole time I was in there, because the war was over. I made it through that, and here these guys are shooting up and there was a lot of them killed that night.
The war is over. Let's trace these last steps back to the United States. You hear the war is over. The unofficial is August 14th, 15th, depending upon where you're at in international date line. September 2nd is when Harry Truman declared VJ Day. Where are you during that period of time?
I'm on the high sea. Our orders were changed, and instead of going to Manila or Japan, I got orders to go to Boston Harbor. I pulled into Boston Harbor September the 4th, 2 days after the official signing on the Missouri. I was overseas and back before I was 20. Quite a lucky man, quite a lucky lad. I wasn't even a man yet. I had the experience of being a man, but at 19, you're not very mature even after going through a whole war. But I was so very fortunate to get back into the States that quick. I didn't have enough points to get out. I got a 45-day furlough, come home, see my family and a lot of people. I was shipped down to Camp Polk, Louisiana, and there they deactivated our outfit. From there, I still had 6 months I had to serve, so I was shipped right back to where I took basic training, Camp Swift, Texas, and I was in the 2nd Infantry Division. And that's where I finished up my tour and come up to Fort George E. Meade and was discharged on the 13th of April, 1945. That's why I like the 13 as a number.
13th of April, 46?
46, I'm sorry.
Okay. As we close, what's the reaction? You see the shores of the United States of America. You've taken a window and seen a piece of the Holocaust up close to the combat. Germans, bullets whizzing by your head. What did it feel like seeing the shores of the United States again?
Oh my gosh. Well, it was so wonderful. It was. I don't think you can describe it. The emotions were not that great, but I was so relieved that the world's at peace. At least I thought so. That we're really never going to have peace. But I do remember one thing. I called in there, and on the tugboat down there was a beautiful young girl. I seen her when I pulled it. She was very, very pretty.
And the people on the street, you're in uniform.
Yeah.
The reaction to you. You're getting off. It's only 2 days after VJ Day.
Well, I don't think there was that many. We went to Camp Miles Standish in Boston there. I didn't see that many people. The United States was the United States. We were totally united at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And for a good while after that war, we had a common cause, and everybody did their job. Maybe you didn't want to do it, but everybody did it, whether it was home here, being Rosie the Riveter, whether it was some kid like me that couldn't get off his mother's apron strings and thought I'd never make it. But there was a bunch of us kids. That's wars are fought with teenagers. Politicians, excuse the expression, they create wars.
I hope never to create one. You came back, and you came to Boston. When did you see your folks as we wrap this up?
When did I see them?
They weren't in Boston.
No.
Okay.
No, I went to Camp Miles Standish. How the devil did I get home? Did my dad come for me? He did when I shipped overseas. That's another story, but it's a lot of stories. I got a pass to go home, and I went in and seen the old man, and he said, "Where you want to go?" I said, "I want to go home," but I said, "It's a lot further than 50 miles, and 50 miles that I want to go." He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Pottstown, Pennsylvania." He said, "Well, why don't you wait a while and take it tomorrow?" I said, "I don't want it tomorrow, I want it today." And he relented and gave me the pass, and he threatened me if I didn't get back in time, but that's another story. I got home, my dad come up to New Brunswick and drove us home, me and another kid, and I had a few hours with my family and then shipped overseas. Coming home, when I came home, I had 45 days to leave. I can't even... Oh yes, I did come. I come home because I went through Lebanon, Pennsylvania. I remember seeing the Dutch girl. We went to Indiantown Gap, and then I got my 45 day to leave. So I guess Dad brought me home from Indiantown Gap, and that's how I got home.
Your mother sets her eyes on you. You look at her. You're still a teenager. What's going through each of your hearts, do you think, at that moment?
Well, Mom was the more, once a mother, always a mother. That's the greatest institution there is, as far as I'm concerned. And I know she was very, very glad to see me. Of course, I was too. I was always closer to Mom than my father, but after I got home from overseas and got back to working again, he and I became like brothers. We became very close also.
Your parents are very excited, and we are as well. Thank you for sharing your story. I know it's heartfelt. Some parts are tough, but we're glad that you took the time with us. And thank you for your service that's enduring with the Berks County chapter of the Battle of the Bulge Survivors.
Yeah, we are survivors because we're in the 90s now. It's been an honor, and the older I get, the more honor it is to be a part of it.
You're the same age as my mother, and she's got a birthday coming up here not too many months. But we certainly wish you many more.
Thank you, Mark.
God bless you for your service.
God has blessed me.
Enormously.
Thank you.
John, we spent some time together recently at the Hay Creek Historical Association, and I know you've done World War II events there. I saw you sitting at a table not many months ago, and you had a spread of materials. What's in that materials, those pictures? What story do they tell?
They're the complete story of where I traveled from England to across to France, and through France up to Belgium and to the Battle of Bulge, and the whole complete travel, then back across Europe and to where we met the Russians in the Elbe River. And I have all pictures of that.
Let's start at the end of the story first. You met the Russians. What was that interaction like? There's a language, there's a cultural barrier, but there was an atmosphere. Can you describe that to us?
I can't give you that at all, because the day we met the Russians, I was waiting everything was jammed up at the Elbe River at Torgau, and I had been sick for several weeks, and I went to a medic for something from my stomach, and when he looked at me, looked too terrible, and he wouldn't even let me go back to my truck. He sent for my duffel bag, and so I have no story after we met the Russians.
It was the spring of 1945.
Yes.
How close are we to the end of the war, which would have been May of 45?
Well, it was the end of the war in Europe. But it was only a matter till they dropped the atom bomb to the end of the war, and was complete.
We're coming up on VE Day in Europe, and your travels took you over what period of time from England to the Elbe River? What month do you recall, and what year was it from England to the Elbe River?
From when we left England in 45 till we met the Russians.
Is there anything that stands out about your experience, a frightful moment, a joyous moment during the course of your time in Europe?
Well, to start, I was a real close friend of the First Sergeant, Al Hay, and whenever he could give us a break, the ones from D Company, and the first thing he gave me while we were in England, he gave me a 2-day pass, and my helper, Leo Henriks, a 2-day pass to London.
And so I'm imagining this was the joyous moment. You get to go to London.
Wonderful, yes.
What happened in London?
Well, while we were there, we didn't hear the buzz bombs falling in London when we were there. But when we went back to Winchester, which was all the way south there, then there was constant buzz bombs coming in over, and you'd hear the tremendous explosions.
So you had time back in England for R&R, but you're saying there was still a lot of tension in the air.
Yes.
The Battle of the Bulge took place in December of 44 through January of 45. You were in theater. Where exactly were you, and what was going on where you were at?
When we were in London, eating Christmas dinner, they told us to report to our vehicles after we ate. And we went, and while before that, the English civilians had loaded all our vehicles on a small ship. The ship was only about 100 foot wide, and it hauled all the 14 Jeeps of our company, 14 of the 19 Jeeps of our company, and all the drivers, and my maintenance truck and my helper, Leo Henrys. And they put us on the ship, and we went through the English Channel and across to Liège, Belgium, not Liège, to Le Havre, France, and went up through France to Belgium and Liège, and then we went south from there to the Battle of the Bulge, and we relieved the 99th where they had lost all their vehicles, and we hauled, and they had replacement in the 99th, but they didn't have any vehicles enough left, so we hauled ammunition, food, and whatever the drivers.
As we close this little snippet here and window to the Battle of the Bulge in that theater, did you have any sense, because there was a point at which the Germans were pushing through and winning, did you have any sense, or did you pick up from others that we might get overrun?
We had a job. Our first job was picking up the dead, and they sent foes back. There's ones that were shell-shocked, not fit to go on service again, back in line, and they sent them to us drivers, and that they couldn't even talk to you. They just had a screaming cry, and mostly they would point, and then where we were to look for their buddies that they had lost, and they weren't going to go back till they knew their buddies were all there. So that and hauling the food and ammunition is what we were doing.
You're carrying dead bodies. You're experiencing men who are shell-shocked. What does that stir up in you? What emotion rose out of you at that time?
Well, it could have slowed us down, but you didn't when you see these dead and wounded, you just kept on going. You didn't think. You didn't have time to think. You just, only thing you knew, you had to get the job done. That's how we worked.
Eventually, the Allies are successful. An incredible loss of life, 19,000 Americans, nearly 100,000 casualties. But I spoke at first of the Nazis perhaps overrunning your position, and then the tide turned. Do you realize the tide is turning later in January at 45, and you're going to be successful?
And in the area that we were, we weren't having trouble with the enemy. I mean, we were back of the line. So we didn't get fired on as much there doing what we were there as we did after we went across Germany. That's when we really got.
Your group meets the Russians. We're not far from VE Day, but there's still a war raging in the Pacific, and my dad was in that theater. Was your unit or your group contemplated to ship out to the Pacific? I've talked to other veterans, and they say they were getting ready to package us up.
I had 3 points short of going home with our division when I got to it, which that's a long story too. I wasn't with my division for several months because of being in the hospital. And I had to, when I was released from the hospital, there was the Army wasn't organized, and I had to find my way from Liège, Belgium, back up to 40 miles below Berlin, where my division was, and they were ready to be shipped out and be deactivated, the whole division. But I didn't. I was 3 points short of going with them. So then I went on the Army of Occupation.
You were in the Army of Occupation in Japan.
No, in Germany.
In Germany, okay. They didn't move you. Okay.
I had too many points to go to Japan.
Okay. The war is over. The announcement's made in August. The signing of the Instrument of Surrender on September 2nd, 1945. I've asked others, where were you? What was your reaction?
I was in the hospital, and I got back, and then I was in the Army occupation then.
Celebratory, the war's over. Talked to a gentleman recently, the nurses at the hospital were kissing him, he said. Hugs, high fives, World War II is finished.
Yes.
All right?
But I was in charge. I was transferred to the 84th Ordnance Depot, and I had to have over 100 trucks being, and I had a dispatcher, 2 dispatchers to keep these trucks running, and I had to watch over the maintenance, and I was really busy.
Your job's not over, it
No.
sounds like. Okay. And so there wasn't a whole lot of time for celebrating. You eventually get back stateside after you've done your occupation responsibilities. When did that occur, and what was that like when you returned home?
When I returned home, my daughter was born, and she was exactly a year old the day I got back and discharged and in the house. And that's the first I saw her.
That sounds like a very powerful moment, John.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind and your heart as
Well,
you see your daughter?
Today she's a 71-year-old retired school teacher.
All right. But that was a special time, wasn't it?
Yes, yes,
And it's been special ever since.
yes,
And obviously, you've got a wife you're coming back to,
yes,
and she's overjoyed to see you.
yes.
All right. Well, John, you know, you've been very generous with your time. We appreciate your valor, your patriotism, and your willingness to share this story. And what's just as outstanding is you continue to serve in the community. And so it's a delight to see you in Robinson Township and at the Hay Creek Festival. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for today's program. I'm State Representative Mark Gillen. If you need assistance with any state matter, please feel free to contact me at my local office or through my website. The address and number will be shown in a moment. Thanks for watching, and please join me next time for Legislative Report.